So I'm seeing a pair of glasses here, so I'm gonna hold on to those. Now I'm just gonna have to navigate all of what's connecting. For sure, around you, there's a lady who acknowledges that she feels like she died kind of too soon. The thing is that she feels like she at least got to reach middle age, or at least got to kind of reach around that time frame. And she's like, I got to this point. It's not like I died in my 20s, but I didn't die in my 80s. The feeling that comes through with this, technically, it was more of a feeling of like, when it comes to getting the news of my passing, I feel like not everyone at one point was kind of around or had the opportunity to say goodbye. So when we hear, it's almost like, oh my God, this is a surprise or a shock, because it's almost like I would want to be holding her hand in the moment that she passed.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
She's having me acknowledge a reference to a battle. She's having me talk about the last 6 months of her life, and then she's having me refer to spreading. She has me refer to 4 girls that I need to highlight, but
I can't even breathe.
Where would the 4 girls be total?
There's 4 of them.
Awesome, great. From her perspective, the feeling is like, I think I'm ready to go. I just am not ready to leave my family. And the feeling is, from her perspective, like,
This is crazy.
when I pass, I'm not gonna be worrying about myself because I'm worried about my girls. And she goes,
Oh my gosh, you're so sad, my girl.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She's saying, my girls, my girls, my girls. And she's like,
Oh my
I'm okay when I
gosh.
transition, but I'm worried about my girls. I wanna make sure my girls are gonna be fine. And she is having me acknowledge that there's a feeling of, at the time of her passing, the reason why I wanna emphasize this feeling of kind of suddenness is because I don't feel like everybody got to actually
My
be there
sister
in that moment.
didn't. My sister didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't. And so she just never got to say goodbye. Because she was away in college.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh, good.
You said my girl.
Yeah, that's how she views him.
Yeah, so she just didn't get to say goodbye.
And, right.
And she didn't have that moment. That's what she used to say.
That's my girls.
And that's what Grandma said. She said that I can go, but I don't want to leave my girls.
Do you know if there's a Liz in the family at all, to your knowledge?
Yeah, without question, that's my mom and the woman who painted this.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So my mom painted this of me. I think it might have been the only portrait that she ever really painted that I sat for.
I love that. What an amazing moment to get to capture. And it has so much meaning, and that oftentimes really makes a big difference when I'm holding on to an object. This is interesting the way this comes across. Now, there is a woman who comes on your mom's side who references to an illness, and this is like referencing to decline. There is a reference to cancer that I need to mention on your mom's side, and then we talk about this being rapid or quick. In the last month, I feel like everything kind of speeds up. Do you know who had the cancer that ultimately affected the lungs?
My mom.
Okay. Now, the thing that comes through with this is there's an acknowledgement of a scan and missing a scan, as in like if we get a scan and everything looks fine, and then we end up having to need another and we like reveal something as being wrong.
Okay.
That's kind of the gist that comes through. But there's...
That's very specific.
Yes.
It's also accurate.
Yes.
Yeah, she had been a smoker her whole life.
Right.
And then she had terrible respiratory problems.
Right.
And her HMO kept saying, oh, it's a cold.
Right.
It's like months and months would go by and they'd say, oh, you have a cold, you have bronchitis.
Right.
Basically, they waited like 4 months to do any tests for cancer.
Right.
And I guess that's technically why she died so young.
Sure, and to her, I mean, as the person going through this experience, I think it was important for her now for it to be known that she knows that though things could have been done differently, ultimately she was going to pass away anyway. So regardless of how that situation went, she's feeling a sense of like, it's okay.
Okay.
With how this went, and I'm okay with it. Did your mom have an... I don't know why she's presenting the sense of humor, but it's fun. It's a unique sense of humor. She's an interesting lady. Let me think how to put this. She's joking about being moody, and like, there's a reference to like, I'm one way this way and then another way the next, but it's like dependent on the day. But she's not viewing this like a negative sense. It's more of like a self-deprecating kind of like a funny thing. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Yeah, she was funny. And I sort of, like growing up, I didn't know that there were unfunny people in the world. Part of, I think, what is sort of coming through, I get the sense that there's like a little bit of a playfulness to it.
Absolutely, and I would say that's a great way to put it. There's a deep need from her perspective for you to know that you were never a burden, and that raising you from her perspective was a privilege, and that regardless of how she handled or mishandled certain situations, that fundamentally she loved you. she acknowledges her love life and her relationships, and never wanted those relationships to take away from her relationship with you. And that's the way I would put it.
Okay, that was a huge part of growing up.
Yeah. This is just somebody who was trying to be happy and find a sense of fulfillment in ways that, you know, she might have struggled with. So that
makes a lot of sense. My mom raised me on her own, and the relationship we had was very complicated. At times, she was my best friend, and then other times she was also a little bit boy obsessed. So sometimes she would kind of disappear with men that she was dating. So I would say I had a challenging, complicated, at times wonderful, and at times difficult relationship with my mom.
This is kind of strange. Okay, what would this be? Family member. That's so weird. There's another situation within your family, if I'm interpreting this correctly. Do you have a biological mom that's passed?
I have a biological mom and a adoptive mom who passed. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, my biological mother, there was a secret around my adoption.
Okay.
And my mother, Rhoda, the one that we're referring to, Rhoda basically would never tell me the truth about my adoption. And she died not wanting me ever to know about my biological mother. Like, what's the secret that she was holding on to? That's what I can't figure out. I spent a long time searching on this, hiring private investigators, doing my own homework. I really couldn't ever figure out why was she afraid to allow me to know that family and what happened.
Right. To be honest, when I'm connecting to biological mom's energy, there is an acknowledgement when I'm going to the brain and mental of what indicates maybe an undiagnosed mental disorder. If we have a parent who, for example, is a paranoid schizophrenic, and I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but if we have a parent who is, to tell their child, hey, your mom was a paranoid schizophrenic, can scare the out of that child. Because that child will think, oh my God, what age am I going to develop paranoid schizophrenia? At what age is it going to happen to me? When am I going to be like my mom? The feeling is basically not wanting to expose you to this individual. I hate to put this, there could have been some genetic factors when it comes to mental illness within family on your mom's side that maybe we didn't want everyone to fully know about.
So she's protecting me, is what you're saying?
From her perspective, she views it as her protecting you. No matter how that was received on your end, the feeling is like I was protecting her because I knew that her mom was a lot worse mentally in what she had to go through than she even fully was aware. Okay, perfect. So immediately, I want to go to your mom's side of family. I do feel like I have to kind of tune in on that direction. I've got the 3 women. Okay, give me 1 second. 1 minute. Victor. Okay, Victor. That's random. Okay. I just have to kind of get this out. There's a very distinct reference to a V name that I have to highlight. This is really weird, and V names aren't very common. So generally, typically, I'm looking at like Victoria or something along those lines. They're having me bring this up, but I don't know if this is necessarily the name of a person as much as this could be referencing to something else. But it's V, and I'm saying it very strongly.
My mother's side of her family all come from Victoria in Australia.
Awesome, perfect. Because I don't know if this felt like a name as much as feels more like a place.
Is she noisy up there like she was down here?
Oh, yes. It all comes through in a very funny, very like wanting to make other people laugh, wanting to make other people smile, being a little ornery. No matter how much she aged, she never let go of that feistiness to some extent, and that's really special. And that's a trait that she honestly thinks she's not that different from you with, so.
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far.
And she's bringing up a situation, and she's talking about her health care, and there's a feeling of an appreciation for being able to be there and taking care of her or doing things that traditionally we would be viewing as like hospice is doing. And the feeling is thank you for doing these things because you didn't have to, but you did anyway. And there's this feeling of it's so much more personal when it's being done from someone that I know and that I care about. And there's this feeling of knowing that this is a responsibility that a lot of people wouldn't initially jump on. And there's a feeling of like, I know how hard it was to have to see me in this state and be there for me, but thank you for being able to actually be there. And there's a feeling of when some of the men in the family might have stepped back or not been able to kind of handle certain situations, there's a feeling of appreciation. And she needs you to know that she went when she wanted to go and that she was okay with the time that she did. She actually is acknowledging the last 24 hours of her life, and she brings up the fact that she should have gone 24 hours before. It's interesting the way this comes through, because from her perspective, she's saying, I should have gone the day before, but she held on for this last 24 hours for some reason to go. And this for her was a good thing. This isn't something that's sad. She comes across with this as giving closure. Does that make sense overall?
It does make sense.
Yeah.
My mother's name was Norma, and she passed away from colon cancer. And I took care of her when she got sick, so I was there when she passed away.
Right.
She waited for me to come home until she passed, and for 24 hours, I was on a 24-hour watch with her, taking care of her and giving her medicine every couple of hours for 24 hours.
She's proud of you in a whole other way for that alone and for being able to withstand that.
I had a good teacher.
Absolutely.
It was an honour to be able to do that and to do that for someone. And you always kind of wonder if, you know, they know that you're doing that.
On her end, there's a feeling of like, I have closure, I'm okay. She, though she might not physically be here, is still very present in your life, in your work. And there will be moments where I think you'll kind of hear her. And the feeling is like, I know exactly what Mom would do right now or what she would be saying.
Sometimes I don't want to.
Exactly. But that's her way of making that connection. And there's just this feeling of touching the hair. So please know that. I don't know why this is coming through in that way. But if you do have any instances where you feel this, know that that's your mom.
She was a hairdresser as well.
Oh, I see.
When my mother was young, she was a hairdresser.
Right.
And she would always yell at me if she didn't think my hair looked perfect. She would always be yelling at me and telling me, go and get a haircut or go and get my regrowth done or go and do something.
Right.
So
That's so funny.
maybe that's why. My mother was really strong. She was an amazing woman. She started her career as a hairdresser, although I never knew her to be a hairdresser. She owned nightclubs when I was a kid growing up. My father left when I was really young, so my mother raised me as a single mother, and she was just probably the strongest person I knew.